and take it now to some Heisman conversation. This is one that we really had a lot of fun talking about here at our Chat Sports studios. So Harris, take it away at number 5. Who you got, man?
So at number 5, we put a lot of thought and time into this list, and I think it's pretty valuable. We're going to start at number 5 with Kelly Bryant, who I 100% really agree with, but I believe in progression as a quarterback, and I really think that he's going to take a step. Look, it was tough this year. He was constantly in the shadow of Deshaun Watson. Is he Deshaun Watson? How is he going to stack up against, the first-round pick quarterback? And for what was expected of him, he matched up for what his expectations were. He got them back to the college football playoff. He made plays with his legs. He didn't turn the ball over a lot. And next year, by the way, their offense is going to be even better. I think they need to get Travis Etienne involved with the offense a little bit more. So I think we're going to see him take another step as a quarterback. But look, he needs to be able to throw the ball better against good defenses. That's what made Deshaun Watson so good, and that's what makes a lot of college quarterbacks so great, is the fact that it doesn't matter who they're playing. Sometimes you need to buckle down and make the throws. He struggled heavily against Alabama when they threw any sort of zone coverage at him. He couldn't read it at all. When they did a little man in the first half, he made a couple passes here and there. As soon as they went to zone, he had no clue what was going on. I think he's going to have a little bit of issue next year inside the ACC, but I think he deserves to be on this list, at least going into next year. Nice season for him.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you what, Harris. I looked at a bunch of other media networks, some respected, some not, that we had for looking at their Heisman Trophy list. But with that being said, multiple of them had Kelly Bryant as number 1 on their list. I thought that was a little bit crazy. We put him at number 5, and with that, I think he's going to have a great season. I do believe that the reason he's going to be a candidate and will be one throughout the season is because of the success that Clemson's going to have. We've got him as number 2 in our way too early 2018 top 10. And as the quarterback of that team, with putting up stats, he's got some great stats this year. If he continues to progress, he's going to be at that list just because you're the quarterback of the number 2, number 1 team in the country. We've always seen that in the history of the Heisman Trophy. They don't always win that, but they're up there. As long as your team is winning, you're going to be up there if you're the quarterback.
All right, Kelly Bryant is checking in at number 5. At number 4, we have a non-quarterback, and that's going to be J.K. Dobbins, the Ohio State running back. We expect big things out of him in 2018.
I think he, besides Jonathan Taylor, who, mind you, is also on this list, I think that J.K. Dobbins might end up being the best running back in the country. I think he's absolutely spectacular. He was a sensation this year for Ohio State. He took Mike Weber, mind you, is one of the most highly touted running back recruits coming out of high school, and J.K. Dobbins just kind of moved him over to the side. Sure, he had injury problems, but by the time that he came back, J.K. Dobbins was like, no, sorry, I'm going to go 119 for 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. And by the way, he's also fantastic in the receiving game, which as a college running back, you need now. You can't just be a one-dimensional running back. He can do it all. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can run between the tackles and on the outside. And you know what? Maybe I think he can throw the ball a little bit too. He's that good of an athlete. Watch out for this guy. We have him at number 4. Do not be surprised if we have kind of what we had this year with Saquon Barkley and Bryce Love and Jonathan Taylor. Don't be surprised if he's in the top 3 at the end of the year, because I really do think he's in line for a special year. That Ohio State offensive line is going to clear some massive, massive holes for the young guy.
Yeah, I mean, he came in, no one thought he was going to make such an impact. Mike Weber being out in their first game, giving Dobbins the opportunity.
Crazy.
He got Wally pipped, and Mike Weber's going to go into the NFL most likely because J.K. Dobbins is going to be an all-time running back at Ohio State. If Urban Meyer does what he normally does, when there's any uncertainty, he leans on one player. We've seen him do it with Ezekiel Elliott. We've seen him do it with Tim Tebow in the past. If J.K. Dobbins is that guy this year, breaking in a new quarterback, you could see him get an absurd amount of carries, absurd amount of touchdowns, and you might see some stat lines, some like 1,700 yards and 24 touchdowns. J.K. Dobbins, I know I said a little work, he might be Big Ten Player of the Year, but he doesn't have the national kind of cachet and reputation and the team that's going to feature him like J.K. Dobbins does at Ohio State with Urban Meyer. And that's the reason he's number 4 on our top 5 2018 Heisman Trophy list.
Yep. The Buckeye back coming in at number 4. At number 3, a guy we've already talked about, Jalen Hurts, the quarterback for Alabama. Harris, you're not quite sure if he's going to see some big things from him, but James, you like him.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Jalen Hurts as our number 3 quarterback. I literally initially had him at number 1, mostly because I'm still thinking about like the Heisman list from maybe 10, 12 years ago, when it was if you were number 1 in the country, your quarterback was usually top of the list. We saw it with guys like Jason White and Chris Weinke and Eric Crouch back in the late 90s, early 2000s. You go number 1, your quarterback wins the Heisman. It's not like that anymore. We've seen guys on pretty brutal teams like Lamar Jackson. We've seen guys, like Johnny Manziel, 2-3 3 losses win the Heisman. So it's not always about your team anymore. And with that, I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to get that kind of reputation boost. But he's been around forever. He's been a name guy. He's going to have the vote in the South. And he's going to give every opportunity to be leading the #1 team in the country the entire year. And if he plays, if he progresses another year, if they feature him a little bit more as a passer and don't just kind of rely on that 3-headed monster at running back, then Jalen Hurts has every opportunity to be Alabama's 3rd Heisman Trophy winner since 2009. And by the way, their 3rd ever. First at quarterback. They've never had a quarterback win a Heisman.
The one interesting thing, though, that will be about Jalen Hurts, we saw him from his freshman year to his sophomore year. All his completions went down, his attempts went down, his actual overall completion percentage went down, but the amount he turned the ball over went down as well. They went very conservative with him this year, and I think that's the way to do it. I don't think he can be the guy to lead your offense. I think he's a calm, cool, and collected leader, which I mentioned before, who is fantastic in the running game because he can also run the ball a little bit himself. I think he's a fantastic play-action quarterback as well. He can hit open receivers, and that's what the Alabama offense, especially under Brian Dable, showed this year, that we're going to run the ball no matter what you want. Our offensive line is good enough to be able to do that. All we need you to do is not turn the ball over. And we saw this year his quarterback rating was 153.7 compared to 139.1 last year. So his turnovers went down, his overall touchdowns went down. However, his efficiency and his overall quarterback play went up. So I think that we've seen that he is a limited quarterback, and I think that the statistical output he put out this year is probably more in line than what we're going to see in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about his stats dropping a little bit. You know, Lane Kiffin being his offensive coordinator might have helped with those stats last year. So took a little step back. Not a new system by any means, but certainly a new offensive coordinator. And with that, Jalen Hurts is number 3. I don't know about you guys, but got a couple guys in the top 2 that I think
I love it.
They had great years this year, kind of came out of nowhere, and it's going to be for these 2 guys. They are not at traditional powers. They are not with big name coaches that are going to promote them. So as such, these guys are going to have to get the stats that they got this year and have better than expected seasons from their team to win the Heisman. But we got our top 2 coming up.
All right, at number 2, the only Pac-12 player making an appearance, and that's KHALIL Tate, a guy who really came out of nowhere this season.
This dude is a complete and utter sensation, and nobody on the East Coast knows who he is because no one stays up late enough to watch him. You don't even need to throw in all of his game tape. Just throw in the highlights. And he's incredible. 70-yard touchdown, 80-yard touchdown, 50-yard touchdown with his legs, breaking tackles all over the place. He's not really a quarterback. He's more of an athlete. And to be totally honest, that's okay in the Pac-12. You can win games with an athlete at quarterback. He is an absolute freak at the quarterback position when it comes to being able to make plays. The Arizona offense under Rich Rod is actually perfect because it just allows him to do whatever he wants. He's so athletic with the ball in his hands. It's so difficult to tackle him as well because he has a lot of strength. He's also a large dude. I think KHALIL Tate is going to end up winning the Heisman next year, but I think we do him a great service by having him on our top 5 list. More people need to watch what this kid can do because he's not Lamar Jackson throwing the ball, but he can do everything Lamar Jackson can do with his legs. And I think that's special enough for him to be on this list.
Yeah, didn't get the start till mid-season after.
Silly.
After his starting quarterback went down. And with that, he is the ultimate dual threat. And you mentioned his size here, 6'2", 215. I want to talk about his stats. We've got him kind of there combined, but independently, his stats are phenomenal. So he threw for 1,591 yards. So I think that's actually a typo there. I think it's 3,005 yards, guys. 1,591 yards passing. 1,411 yards rushing in 6 starts. I believe we said 6 starts. He was having games down the stretch where he was getting 200 yards rushing. I really want to talk about this for a second.
500 yards a game.
This is the starting quarterback. In this first game, he didn't even start in. Let me just read you his rushing stats. 327, 230, 137, 146, 161, 206. Now, last 3 games against a little bit maybe, I don't say better competition, but just competition in general. 32 yards, 28, 58 to end the year. If he would have stayed on that streak of over 100 games, a couple games over 3 games over 200, 1 game over 300 yards, if he would have stayed on that streak, he would have been number 1 for sure. But he really, kind of like your boy Lamar Jackson, faded down the stretch when it counted. And KHALIL Tate's going to come back next year and have every opportunity to be, a Heisman Trophy winner. I kind of compare him to RG3 at Baylor, not like in the player, but just like a guy who is not from a non-traditional power, who comes out and puts up ridiculous stats, wins a Heisman, and goes on to the pro. The only thing I would hold back is Rich Rodriguez does not know how to coach defense, and if they're a 7-5 team, no matter what stats he puts up, he's not going to win the Heisman.
You mentioned when we were actually making this list before that he'll be a Heisman candidate until they lose 52 to 40 to BYU.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, at number 1 in our 2018 Heisman top 5 is Jonathan Taylor, the Badger back. He was phenomenal this year, broke the freshman rushing record that Adrian Peterson previously held, and that is an incredible stat all in itself.
I think he's going to be the best player in college football next year, and he's honestly the player I'm most excited to see. I love good running backs. There's just something about a great running back dominating college football, multiple games at a time, seeing him break tackles, break off these crazy runs against competent Big Ten football. It's fantastic to see a running back of his stature and also of his age being able to do this. He was 18 this year. He turned 19 in the middle of the season, so he's going to turn 20 in the middle of next year. I think we're watching right now one of the best running backs that we're going to see in college football for a long time, because not only does he have the breakaway speed, he's huge. He's bigger than Saquon Barkley. He's a massive man. 300 carries as a freshman, 2,000 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns. He is special. And I think at the same time, we mentioned how J.K. Dobbins is a little more, two-dimensional than Jonathan Taylor is. But sometimes when you have an offensive line like Wisconsin, you don't need to be that two-dimensional. You can just get 300 carries and get almost 2,000 yards and 13 touchdowns.
10 out of 14 games this year, he had over 100 yards, 3 over 200. The really only knock on him, only 41 yards against Ohio State when it counted. It's in the Big Ten championship game to go to the playoffs. So Jonathan Taylor is our number 1 guy.
I think he got tired, personally. I think eventually down the stretch for a freshman, 300 carries is a lot.
One of the best defenses.
That's a lot.
Lena, who else we got though outside the top 5? Let's talk about the top 5, recap those, then we'll go into some other folks.
Yeah, so we got the top 5 here. We got Kelly Bryant at 5, J.K. Dobbins at 4, Jalen Hurts coming in at number 3, KHALIL Tate at number 2, and Jonathan Taylor at number 1. So let's go take a look at this right here. There's some guys that we're not sure if they're going to go to the draft yet this year. They haven't announced it yet. So here are 3 names to take a look at if they don't declare. Number 1 being Lamar Jackson. Harris is freaking out over here. He loves that dude. Sam Darnold also making an appearance on a list, and Bryce Love. And especially if Bryce Love does not declare for the draft this year, he will be an absolute stud and will be on our Heisman list.
NCAA football not being around anymore has robbed us of one of the great video game players of all time, Lamar Jackson. So sad. Very disappointing. Yeah,
I'm happy to see Lamar Jackson go. I think too much hype for him. He was a sack guy, never a winning guy. Sam Darnold really showed his, lack of ability to play against big-time teams in Ohio State.
Or not throw interceptions.
I really hope Bryce Love comes back, because I think for me, he would be above Taylor as my number 1 if he came back next year. I don't think I could say that for Jackson or Sam Darnold, given what Jonathan Taylor did this year, given he's only a true freshman going to sophomore year. So these guys will be in the top 5 for sure if they came back. But there are quite a few other guys we can watch to kind of look at the Heisman Trophy for 2018, guys. Can you believe it's already 2018?
I cannot believe it. And exactly, James, those are the names that everyone's really expecting. But this is football, and we know that there's a very high chance that someone whose name's not on this list will hoist the trophy in 2018. So let's take a look at some other players to watch. We have DeAndre Swift, Dwayne Haskins, as we're bringing up the graphic here, Justin Herbert, the Oregon quarterback, Jarrett Stidham, the Auburn quarterback, and also SHEA Patterson, previous Ole Miss quarterback, who hopefully will play for the Wolverines in 2018.
Yeah, so Dwayne Haskins is the first one I want to talk about here, because he's kind of more of the unknown on this list of all these players. He came in, he's only really had a quarter and a half of valid playing time against real competition, but he looked remarkable. And really, this is a program, coach, and quarterback kind of thing. He is not going to be your JT Barrett kind of running 20 times a game sometime they need it. He truly is going to be a player who can pass the ball 40 times a game. So Ohio State's going to change their offense a lot next year. And we've seen Barrett, a guy who's had remedial passing skills sometime. He's put up huge numbers passing. When you get a true NFL guy like Dwayne Haskins in there, he's going to just excel in this offense next year. Against Michigan, he brought him back. He won the game when JT Barrett was out. He kept that playoff hopes alive. And he's only going to be heading into his redshirt sophomore season. He redshirted in 2016, came in 17, got some playing time, and next year. Now, there's going to be a quarterback competition, but if Dwayne Haskins plays at the top of his game, what we expect of an Urban Meyer quarterback, he's definitely going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate all season. And the reason why I said about program, and I also said about coaches, think back to who Urban Meyer has had. Basically, whoever's his quarterback is always a Heisman Trophy candidate. They don't always win it, of course. They don't always make it to the final, but you go back to Alex Smith, Tim Tebow, Braxton Miller, JT Barrett, all Heisman Trophy candidates under Urban Meyer, and that's what Dwayne Haskins is.
I'm a little worried about Dwayne Haskins, though. I kind of need to see it. It was kind of the same thing when it comes to Jameis Winston, that we just kind of didn't really know what we were going to expect of him, but I'm interested to see what he can do with his legs, because at the same time, he is a superior athlete. I'm excited to see what we can do with him.
All right, let's take a look at some other players to take a look at.
Well, we were going to talk about SHEA Patterson in a second, right? So SHEA Patterson at Michigan coming in. If he comes in and gets eligibility, which is still unknown, he will be, I think, a Heisman Trophy candidate based on what he did at Ole Miss. He's one to look for. He's really the wild card out of this role, and I'm excited to see it. I think Michigan fans should be, based on what we saw of their quarterback play, reasonably excited for SHEA Patterson to come in. Eligibility should be known by the end of this semester, though, by May at the latest.
A lot of Wolverine fans holding their breath on whether or not SHEA Patterson will have eligibility. But like I said, let's go ahead and take a look at some other players to watch. We have Trace McSorley, the Penn State quarterback, Cam Akers, Ed Oliver, a defensive player making the list, and Will Grier, the West Virginia quarterback. Harris, you seem very excited about this DH.
Ed Oliver is going to be, he's going to be a top 10 pick. The dude's Aaron Donald. My dark horse, I said it was Jarrett Stidham last year. My dark horse for next year is going to be Will Grier. I think he's going to have one of the best statistical outputs of any quarterback in college football. Sometimes stats are going to be able to vault you into the discussion. And if West Virginia ends up with 9, somehow ends up with 9, maybe even 10 wins, I think Will Grier would actually end up being in the conversation. The dude put up crazy statistics this year. You can make an argument that he actually put up the best stats of any quarterback in college football this year outside of Baker Mayfield. So Will Grier, I think, would be a dark horse.
Just think about different Florida football being now. If Will Grier didn't transfer out and was the other quarterback the last few years.
Brett Scott shaking his head. Oh, big. I'm telling you, Will Grier is a fantastic quarterback. I really think that he has a chance. If he puts up another season like he did this year, he's only going to get better. And Dana Holgorsen loves him.
All right, a couple more names to take a look at. Jake Fromm, the Georgia quarterback. He's playing in the national championship come Monday. Also, Jake Browning, a quarterback who, quite frankly, underperformed compared to his freshman season. Not a lot of success coming out of Seattle with him. Washington was ranked pretty high in the rankings this season, but I was not very impressed with his play, but we'll see. 2018, you don't know. Also, A.J. Dillon and Mackenzie Milton making
Jake Browning, number 6
in
the Heisman voting in 2016, 2 years ago, by the way. Came back as a junior, underperformed. Next year, he's going to have one more opportunity to come back and kind of grab that Heisman Trophy. He's one of the guys that everyone's forgot about, Jake Browning. He's got another season, though, to prove that he can be an elite quarterback.
Watch out for Mackenzie Milton, though. I understand that they had Scott Frost, and that's a lot of the reasons why the team was good this year. But if Mackenzie Milton comes back and leads a very talented UCF team to, I don't know, maybe another 9 or 10 win season, I think Mackenzie Milton will definitely be in the conversation next year.